Karl self-propelled guns, also known as Morser Karl, was a World War II German self-propelled siege mortar, Morser, designed and built by Rheinmetall. Its heaviest munition was a 60 centimeters, 24 in diameter, 2,170 kilograms, 4,780 pounds, shell. The range for its lightest shell of 1,250 kilograms, 2,760 pounds, was just over 10 kilometers, 6.2 miles. Each gun had to be accompanied by a crane, a two-piece heavy transport set of railcars, and several modified tanks to carry shells. 7 guns were built, 6 of which saw combat between 1941 and 1945. It was used in attacking the Soviet fortresses of Brest-Litovsk and Sevastopol, bombarded Polish resistance fighters in the Warsaw Uprising, participated in the Battle of the Bulge, and was used to try to destroy the Ludendorff Bridge during the Battle of Remagen. 1 Karl Draht has survived, the remainder were scrapped after the war. In March 1936 Rheinmetall made a proposal for a super heavy howitzer to attack the Maginot Line. Their initial concept was for a weapon that would be transported by several tracked vehicles and assembled on site, but the lengthy preparation time drove them to change it to a self-propelled weapon in January 1937. Extensive driving trials took place in 1938 and 1939 using the first Neubau tank prototype and a scale model to investigate the extremely high ground pressure and steering of such an enormous vehicle. Firing trials took place in June 1939. The full-scale driving trials were held at Unterlüss in May 1940. General Karl Becker of the artillery was involved in the development, from whom the huge weapon gained its nickname. In total, 7 Karl Draht howitzers were manufactured. The first 6 had the nicknames Adam, later Baldur, Eva, later Wotan, Thor, Odin, Loki, and Zyu. The 7th, the research and test weapon, Versuchsdraht, had no name. Delivery of the 6 production vehicles took place from November 1940 to August 1941. In February 1941, discussions commenced concerning increasing the range of the weapon, and in May 1942, 54 centimeters, 21 in Draht 041 barrels were ordered for the 6 vehicles. At a conference with Adolf Hitler in March 1943 it was stated that the first Draht 041 would be delivered by June 1943, and the third by mid-August. Only 3 of the Draht 041 barrels were actually completed for mounting on Karl Draht near I, 4 and V. Although any vehicle could be converted to use the smaller weapon, 22 Panzer IV Ausf. D, E and F chassis were modified, with a superstructure capable of carrying 4 shells that replaced the turret, and outfitted with a crane as munition slepper for Karl Draht ammunition transporters, loaders. 2 or 3 of these munition slepper were assigned to each weapon. The 124-ton vehicle was propelled by a Daimler-Benz MB5038 12-cylinder liquid-cooled gasoline engine or a Daimler-Benz MB507C 12-cylinder liquid-cooled diesel engine, but this was mainly used for aiming. The mount had only 4 degrees of traverse on each side, as the engines provided a top speed of only 10 km per hour, 6.2 miles per hour. For longer distances the Karl Draht was disassembled using a special 35-ton, 34-long-ton, 39-short-ton, mobile crane into 7 loads. The chassis was loaded onto a 6-axle Kuhlmeier-Strassen roller lowboy trailer. The other parts of the gun were lighter and used 4-axle trailers. If the trailer with the chassis on board had to cross a bridge that couldn't carry their combined weight, the chassis had to be offloaded and driven across under its own power. Long-range transport and preparation procedures. The weapon was moved long distances via rail on a variant of a Schnabel car. The whole chassis was hung between 2 huge pedestal-mounted swiveling arms fixed to 5-axle bogies. When it reached its destination, the weapon was detached from rail cars supporting arms and driven to its intended firing location. The chassis of the ordnance was then lowered to the ground by raising the continuous track unit's road wheels by rotating their torsion bar sprung suspension arms to drop the chassis close to the ground to distribute the recoil forces more evenly in preparation for firing. The road wheels for each track set were also similarly raised to allow the tracks to clear the rails while being transported by rail. between the pair of Schnabel railcars. The Karldraht proved to have no problems moving over normal soil, but under no circumstances was it allowed to make turns on soft soil lest it throw a track. The chassis had to be backed into position to fire, which expedited movement to a new position. But the land to be used for the ordnance's firing position had to be precisely leveled and the approach route prepared ahead of time to fill in soft spots and any ditches, etc. The mortar could only be loaded at zero elevation, so it had to be re-aimed between shots. The original heavy 600 mm, 24-in, concrete piercing shells, Schwerbeton made a crater up to 15 meters, 49 feet, wide and 5 meters, 16 feet, deep. More range was desired and the light concrete piercing shell, Leicht Betongranit, 040 was introduced in 1942. Firing trials for the 540 mm, 21-in, shells were not completed until the end of 1944 and they were not used in combat before then. The original 600 mm heavy shell had no designation other than the name. The Draht number was added for the newer shells. On January 3, 1941 heavy battery, Schwer Battery, 833 was created at the Bergen training ground and ordered to be combat ready by February 15, 1941. On April 2, 1941 it was expanded into Heavy Artillery Battalion, Schwer Artillery Battalion, 833. The original Battery 833 was redesignated as the first battery of the new battalion and a new second battery was formed, each battery having 2 howitzers, with orders to be combat ready by May 1, 1941 in preparation for Operation Barbarossa. Initially a single battery was to be deployed against the Soviet fortress at Brest-Litovsk, but that was changed by May 14, 1941 when the other battery was ordered to attack the Soviet border fortifications near Lviv. The first battery was assigned to 4th Army Corps of 17th Army of Army Group South near Lviv while the second battery was ordered to support the attack by the 4th Army of Army Group Center against the Brest fortress. The batteries were issued 60 and 36 rounds respectively. Little is known of 1st Battery's operations except that 4th Army Corps reported on 23 June that the battery was no longer needed and was no longer operational due to technical deficiencies. 2nd Battery's weapons had some assembly problems, issues with the electrical firing mechanism and non-standard ammunition, not surprising for the Karldraht's combat debut, but managed to fire 31 of their 36 rounds by 24 June. It was ordered home that day by Army Group Center where the battalion was ordered to reform with 8 21 cm, 8.3-in, Morser 18 howitzers on August 6, 1941. In preparation for the attack on Sevastopol scheduled for the early summer Heavy Artillery Battalion 833 was ordered to form a Karl battery with 3 weapons on February 18, 1942, 2 of which were Thor and Odin, camouflaged firing positions 15 meters, 49 feet, long, 10 meters, 30 feet, wide and 3 meters, 10 feet. Deep had to be dug for each howitzer to minimize Soviet counter-fire before they could move into position. On May 20, 1942 the 11th Army reported all 3 Karldraht were at the front with a total of 72 heavy and 50 light concrete piercing shells. Lviv Army Corps reported that 19 heavy shells were fired between 2nd and 6th of June, 54 on 7th of June and all 50 light shells between 8 and 13 June. More shells, 29 heavy and 50 light, were shipped to the battery before the end of the month. All 50 light shells were fired on 30th of June and 25 heavy shells the following day. Many of these shells were fired at the 2 305 mm, 12.0-in, twin-gun armored turrets of the Maxim Gorky Coastal Defense Battery, 14. Although shells fired at the turrets had little effect other than to jam one of the turrets and possibly knock out electrical power to the turrets, both of which were repaired without too much trouble, they did rather more damage to the concrete structure supporting the turrets as well as the command center located some 600 meters, 2,000 feet, away. called the Bastion by the Germans. On July 19, 1942, the battery was ordered to ship their weapons to Hillersleben for refurbishment. One Dud shell was recovered by the Soviets and flown to Moscow for evaluation. On July 7, 1942, Heavy Artillery Battalion 833 was ordered to form another battery with 1 or 2 Karlsrate. This was done by 15th of August as Schweer Battery 628, Karl, with 2 weapons, although sufficient personnel to man 3 guns was to be furnished by Heavy Artillery Battalion 833. On 22nd of July, the Army High Command, Oberkommando des Heers, OKH, issued an order to send the battery to Army Group North to support its planned offensive, Operation George, Unternehmen Georg, against Leningrad. The order for Georg, dated 22nd of August, specified Battery 628 with 3 guns, presumably with 2 operational guns and 1 in reserve, was to participate. Army Group North reported the battery's arrival on 1 and September 2, 1942, but the Soviets preempted Georg with heavy attacks against the German forces besieging Leningrad, so the Karlsrate didn't get into action. On 18th of October, OKH ordered the 11th Army to transfer the battery as soon as possible to Leipzig, but the 11th Army asked to retain it to use in a new version of Georg to begin later that month. Georg was again postponed in late October, and later cancelled. A new attack, codenamed Feuerzauber, Fire Magic, was planned in which the battery was to participate, but it too was cancelled after the Soviet encirclement of the German forces attacking Stalingrad. OKH finally recalled the battery on December 4, 1942, when it was clear that it had no mission. OKH issued orders to create a Heavy Artillery Battalion, Karl, on May 4, 1943, using the vehicles and equipment of Heavy Artillery Battery 628. This became the first battery of the new battalion, while the other battery was raised from scratch on 15th of May, as was the battalion headquarters. Each battery had 2 Karlsrate plus 1 in reserve. 18th Army of Army Group North had plans to use 1 Karlsrate against the Oranienbaum Bridge head west of Leningrad during the summer of 1943, but the battalion was ordered to return the Karlsrate to Leipzig on 8th of August. Just like the 833rd, the battalion was ordered to reform with 8 21 cm, 8.3 in, Morser 18 howitzers on August 29, 1943, with effect by 10th of September. A unit for Karlsrate, Kommando für Karlsrate, was formed on that same date as caretakers for the weapons. This was redesignated unit for special equipment of Heavy Artillery Battalion, motorized, Kommando für Sonderdraht des Schwerartillerieabteilung, Mo. 628 on June 2, 1944.